This is my video for InRange TV's Moonshine Brutality held at Echo Valley Training Center in September of 2024. This is a CQB format event, meaning there are no targets past 100 yards. Divisions included Deadeye, Roaring 20s, Service Pistol, Shotgun and Pistol, Pistol Caliber Carbine, Partisan 2-gun, Armored Plus P 2-gun, and Cyberpunk, which is the division I'm competing in. If you want to read the rules in detail, go to brutalitymatches.org and look in the rules and division section. But essentially, Cyberpunk division is the division for all weird futuristic guns that are not AR-15s. One category of firearms that can be used are pistol caliber firearms that are not AR-15s with barrel lengths less than 16 inches. The gun I'm going to use for most of the match is a Scorpion Evo 3 Plus with 4.5-inch barrel, the new KE Arms STC-1 Emperor Scorpion Searlink Technology trigger, and lead and steel Pandora red dot 0 to 50 yards. My first stage of the match is the Humanitarian aid stage. There's a 180-second par time to move as many food bags as possible. All static steel targets at this match require 3 pistol caliber hits to neutralize. I'm telling the RO that I'm having a hard time hearing his hits and to be louder. Once I'm over here, I have to move the weighted dummy off the pile of sandbags representing the food aid bags. Move a bag over. After this first iteration, every bag moved by the end of the 180-second par time is a minus 15-second bonus. But in between moving the bags, I have to neutralize all 3 targets again. If the shooter wanted to, they could support off of that fence or the post to make their hits easier. But for most of the stage, I don't really feel it's necessary. I'm using some inexpensive Walker Razor Ear Pro at this match because my old Peltors that were about 12 to 15 years old finally wore out. And I'm going to find these Ear Pro to be limiting throughout the match because they don't have directional hearing. Like, I can't tell what direction talking's coming from, what direction hits are coming from. And they cut out a bit too long after every shot fired. So I have a hard time hearing the hits, and I have a hard time hearing the RO call the hits. Quite often when I'm watching this video after the match, I hit the targets 4 or sometimes 5 times before I heard the RO call the final hit on the target. Good example of that on some of the engagements there. During this next iteration, you're going to see me have a malfunction that requires turning and dumping out the spent casing and a live round. Not quite sure why this one happened. It did rain throughout the duration of the match, and the gun got quite wet and had some rust inside of it at the end of the day, so maybe moisture in the action had something to do with it. The other thing that happened here was I was talking to the RO on the clock to just call when I had all 3 hits on target rather than 1, 2, 3 because I'm shooting too fast for him to count. So it's easier for him to just call when the 3rd hit is done on the target. I asked the RO to start calling out how much time I had left so I would know if I could push myself fast enough to get another rep in. Going to get one more shooting rep in here, move another bag, but by the time I move that last bag, I'm going to be at 170 seconds, and 10 seconds is not enough time to get another rep in, so I'm just going to call it after I move the last sandbag. I end up with 7 sandbags moved, giving me 105 seconds off the 180-second par time. The most bags anyone moved was 8. This stage begins by neutralizing a static steel target at 100 yards. This target has a hole through the center of it representing an armor plate. And then another target at about 50 yards. Again, all static steel require 3 hits each. I now have to plug in the USB drive and activate a second par timer here. Once that par time's activated, I have 30 seconds to do 4 reps of neutralizing the infinity target, 3 hits on the static steel, and then knocking over one of the knockdowns. Every iteration of this completed is minus 15 seconds off your time. With that completed, I have to unplug the USB drive, retain it somewhere, and then re-engage the 2 static steel targets that I started on. I am first Cyberpunk and 6th overall in this stage. This stage begins by neutralizing the android sentry, then retrieving the android hand and taking it over here and placing it on the safe. I then have to neutralize a activator and this Y-swinger target at about 25 yards. Put the gun down, retrieve the alien queen embryo out of the cryotube, and then I have to begin neutralizing these 3 targets downrange with 3 hits each. With the targets neutralized, I lock the bolt open to reload more easily with the Magpul D50 drum. With this magazine in place, I won't need to do any other reloads for the rest of the stage. From this position, I have to neutralize the same 3 static steel targets again. If you wanted to support off the barrels on this stage, you could, but again, I don't find it necessary to make the hits. Moving forward to the final position, there is a double spinner. One of the spinners must be rotated, and the other spinner is a minus 60-second bonus. Since I'm using a PCC and I know I have plenty of ammo and the recoil control to manage it, I'm going to engage both spinners at the same time. First one goes over pretty quick, and then I focus on the second. I am first in Cyberpunk and first overall in this stage. On this stage, you are raiding the laboratory of a prominent Austrian company. Crawling under the stick simulates bypassing the laser tripwires. One difference with Cyberpunk Division is that, like Deadeye, you can pre-stage your firearms on the stage, unlike all the other divisions. So the Scorpion starts pre-staged there, have to hit the top and bottom of the spinner, and get to a fill line on the genetic receptacle here. I don't have to screw the cap back on, but I don't want it to tip over and have to refill it. From this section, I have to hit 1 plate off the Texas Star, then 1 hit on the static, back and forth until all the plates are neutralized on the Texas Star. Back under the stick, and when at the center, I have to hit top and bottom on the spinner again, then fill the bottle up to the next line. Go under the sticks on this side, and again, I have to alternate hits between the poppers and the static. Back under the stick, back to center. I have to do 1 hit top and bottom on the spinner again, then fill the bottle up the rest of the way. And once I'm done filling that up, there's a bonus. Nice and frothy.
Alternating hits to spin.
So as the RO calls out, I have to get 1 hit on the static between each hit on the spinner, and rotating this is a minus 60-second bonus. In Cyberpunk Division, I can just simply abandon my gun on safe there and retreat out of the stage underneath the sticks again. Once I'm all the way out, I have to face down range and engage the static steel target again with 3 hits. And this is the one time I'm going to use my Flux Raider at this match, drawing it from my custom drop leg rig. Deploying the brace doesn't lock out, and you'll see it collapse on me, and I have to pull it back out, but I easily get the 3 hits. I am first in Cyberpunk and 4th overall in this stage. This is stage 3, escaping Endor. You have to put this tow strap between the 2 trees, simulating setting up a trap for an ATST walker. Once that's fully secured, the shooter has to retrieve the kettlebell representing the dilithium crystals, and then move throughout the stage carrying the kettlebell while engaging targets. That's done. Moving down range carrying the kettlebell, I have to unsling the Scorpion. It does start condition 3. Charge it facing downrange. And then there are 3 static targets downrange that must be hit 3 times each. If these stages seem kind of simple, please keep in mind that using a pistol caliber long gun is the easiest way to shoot the match. If you want to make it harder on yourself, shooting this handgun only is definitely hard mode. Shooting it 2-gun, rifle pistol, is also hard mode because you have to switch between guns much more often because you can only shoot at steel targets outside of 50 yards of the rifle caliber. But if you're using a pistol caliber gun like this in Cyberpunk or in pistol caliber carbine division, you can just sweep the whole stage with it, and the stages are accordingly a lot simpler to shoot. All right, with that final engagement on the static steel, I move forward to the stump And from here, I have to knock down all the yellow steel and then finish out with another series of neutralizations on the 3 static steel at the back of the range. I'm second in Cyberpunk and 5th overall in this stage. Stage 4, Corona's Conquest. The stage begins by carrying your bag of Archaeotech to the ramp of your ship. Once I drop that off over there, I move over to the first shooting position. And again, in Cyberpunk, my gun is starting stage there. Outside of Cyberpunk and Deadeye, people have to carry their guns from the start of the stage. From each of 4 positions, the shooter has to neutralize 4 targets from 25 yards to 100 yards. Here I'm locking in on top of this barricade, not for accuracy per se, but just so I can increase my cadence of fire. Really got to listen for those 100-yard hits with 9mm. If you can't tell with the wardrobe change, this is day 2 of the match for me, and the rain continues. It's just a constant drizzle to downpour, coating everything, and one of the challenges I have is just being able to see some of the targets through the gray and the water accumulating on my lenses of both my optic and my glasses. I am glad this was a CQB format match, because if we had targets past 100 yards, it would have become increasingly difficult to even see them in many cases. It also made the ground pretty slick in a lot of areas, naturally making movement slower. From the next position, I have to shoot through the tire. I'm able to position the magazine of the Scorpion clear between the inside of the tire and resting my vertical foregrip on the outer edge of the tire, so I can actually shoot supported from this position. From the final position, the shooter must raise the battle standard of the Imperium of Man
For the Emperor!
And then engage the final target one-handed. I am first in Cyberpunk and first overall in this stage. Stage begins by neutralizing the revenue or target from the hip. You then ground your gun and load up your Moonshine cart with at least 10 bottles of Moonshine. You then have to drag the cart behind you as you move throughout the course. This red painted stick here is the first fault line. There are 2 targets at roughly 75 yards from here that I must neutralize with 3 hits each. All right, now I have to move forward. There's another fault line for pistol engagement up here. I'm going to stop at it. I'm just going to shoot one-handed because why not? I'm close enough and I don't want to drop the handle and waste time reacquiring it. Moving forward to the next fault line, and I'm going to have to engage a single target at about 100 yards from here. And then I'm going to just step over the fault line and do the final engagement. I am first in Cyberpunk and 5th overall in this stage. Stage 2, Resupply. Shooter begins by neutralizing the infinity target as they get into the trench. From this first position, the shooter has to neutralize all the yellow steel. Because I have such a long magazine of Scorpion, I have to turn the gun almost 90 degrees in both directions to be able to actually see through the port and engage the targets. Now, if it's not obvious, I am absolutely drenched at this point. Glasses are very much obscured. Optic is very much obscured. And no real way to clean them off with everything being soaked before starting the stage. The inside of this trench is quite slick, and all the grayed out targets are increasingly difficult to see throughout the course. What happens on this stage is once you get to a firing position and neutralize the targets, you'll carry an ammo can back to the center, and then every time you pass the firing port going back down to get the next can, you have to re-engage the target again. Also make a note here that the 180 does not apply on this stage as long as your muzzle is pointed down into the trench. Coming back through here as I get into position, I realize that my gun has malfunctioned at the last position, quite possibly from the magazine making contact with the firing port. Or it could be because the gun itself is completely filled full of water. Not quite sure. Movement here feels painfully slow, but I really don't want to slip and eat it in this trench. And my glasses being obscured also slows me down as well, particularly getting into these positions and locating the targets. Definitely not the environment I'm used to as a desert dweller. And by the time I'm done with this stage, I'm ready to be done with this match and back in 100 plus degrees in Phoenix. This is the heaviest ammo can coming back now. Even though the 180 doesn't apply, I handed my gun off to my support hand to keep it pointing roughly downrange. So I could also use my strong hand to carry the heaviest ammo can by itself. Now, going back down, I have to engage through all the previous ports again, and there'll be a final shooting position at the end. In particular, these areas right by the firing ports are pretty slick, and when we did see people lose their footing, it was when they were stepping into those. This trench complex is one of the cooler aspects of using the Echo Valley facility, in that it's there permanently. If you were going to do anything like this, a lot of other ranges, you'd have to fill it back in at the end of the event, if they even let you do it. But in this case, it's continually being expanded and improved by the locals that help us run the event. We're going to have another malfunction down here. Don't think I'm making contact with the magazine. I think the gun is just that dirty from the environment and filled with water that's slowing down the action and making it have intermittent problems. So here's the fastest times on this stage. This was my worst stage of the match and probably the worst conditions I shot in throughout the course of the match. You can see them all the way down here, 7th in Cyberpunk and 33rd overall on the stage. In the end, I am first out of 21 shooters in Cyberpunk division. Overall, I'm first out of 112 shooters. This is my first Brutality match overall win in 6 years of doing these events. I quite often win divisions and get second place or in the top 3 overall, but this is the first time I've won a division and won overall, which is kind of cool after doing it for so long. Thank you for watching. If you like this kind of in-depth competition shooting analysis, please consider supporting me directly on Patreon. Hopefully I'll see you out at a Brutality match in the future. You can find more information at brutalitymatches.org. And always remember, the Second Amendment is for everyone.